So I decided to take the leap, since I was now the new CEO of the company, to go and bring Bill in. And at first, everybody was completely against the idea. Part of the problem was we were so good at what we did, and we had really high ratings on our on-time delivery and our quality, being at, even at that point, they were at 90 and 93%, that we didn't need any additional help. And a lot of problems CEOs have is that people need to change, those people need to change, that person needs to change, that department needs to change. What had to happen was that the CEO had to change. He had to have a transformation. When I started seeing the ability to be able to see through time, space, and cause, I literally was able to understand that when an issue occurred in my company and was brought to my attention, a couple things happened. Number one, somebody already tried to solve the problem and put the fire out. And by the time it got to me, it had already been a raging fire someplace else. And I think most CEOs end up going through that piece. But I was somewhat startling my staff when they walked in. And I would sit them down, and as they go through what the problem was, I'd say, what structure was in place that allowed that to happen? And they kind of look at me saying, well, what do you mean? Well, you know, we learned some things from Bill and so forth. That the structure of what you have inside of a company is what allows the behavior to occur. So I was literally able to help people think this thing through with me, and my senior staff had caught on to the fact that if they changed some things in a structure of how things happen, that the behavior would end up going to, or migrating to, or being magnetized, whatever you want to call it, to the structure in and of itself. One simple example was that we would end up creating all of our orders in this very quick fashion and set them on top of a skid inside the production room. And then at 4:15, we would end up pushing it all out to the shipping guys, and they would all end up having some real issues with it. We were having some mistakes. The structure was build it all up on a skid, take it out to the warehouse, and kind of push it off on those guys. When we simply took a skid and put it on the outside of the door and filled it up from there, and that the guys could see it, then all of a sudden they could start getting the packages, getting them ready, and they didn't feel rushed, and all of a sudden our shipping issues started to go away. One of the most fabulous things that we did, that really the crew did, is that we were able to go from, we did fiber optic cables, we would terminate those. And the way that you judge your capacity is how many ends or how many fiber optic connectors that you can actually put on the end of a piece of fiber. We were at 450 ends that we were doing in a day. And I was also told that we will never be able to get above that unless we hire a bunch more people or spend a whole lot more money on a bunch more equipment. Because we took the applied principles that we had learned through inspired performance and generative behavior, we were able to, inside of 6 months, go from 450 to 5,000 ends a day. We only spent 10% more in labor and 5% more in equipment in order to reach that, because these folks were inspired, and we took away a lot of the issues that, or events, by, instead of doing a quick fix to those, we would end up looking at what caused that piece to happen and make the change and empower the people to make that change. A couple of things, first of all, people need to understand that there are issues within their company. If they think their company is running fine and they don't need anything, then they don't need anything. It'll probably come back to bite them. But when they're considering on something like this, there's a couple of things. First of all, you get to be with your peers. And you get to discuss things. Being a CEO is probably the loneliest position in the world. You can't really talk to your wife about it, you can't talk to your significant other, and the CEO Alliance gives you that first camaraderie, which is very, very important. The second thing is a learning process that can really only be learned outside of where you currently do your business. There are too many distractions every single day in what you do as a CEO. You get interrupted on a regular basis. Sometimes your schedule controls you. And that's not always necessarily bad. But if you don't get away and work in an environment where it gives you an opportunity to open up and deal with other CEOs, it's difficult to explain what the result ends up being, but it is consistent year over year over year. If we had not become part of the CEO Alliance, I think that our customers, basically AT&T, would have buried us. Because we were so good at one level, they would have dumped on us some more. We never would have been able to handle it. And then we would have failed at that point. The idea of a CEO bringing his group up to a place like Sawtee is very inspiring. I had gotten so many kudos from folks that I even had a couple people tell me that if you didn't pay me, I'd still show up for work. And I know that sounds, but it was real. It was really, really sincere from that standpoint, because it was so inspiring after we got back from Sawtee that we were given a direction that we created. We weren't told what to do. I didn't tell them what to do. And a CEO, sometimes we tell too much. The people that really know are the people that are doing the work. When you bring them all together and come to Sawtee, you're going to see a change and a transformation in your company like you have never seen before, but probably have dreamt about.